All right, so today is going to be a little bit different. I've been doing Inktober this month, and one of the reasons I've been able to consistently do it every single day is a friend of mine decided to do it with me. And having a buddy to do it with has actually been super duper motivating. Now, my friend is not traditionally, he doesn't usually draw. He's gone from basically drawing not at all to drawing every single day, concentrated practice. So he's using Inktober to teach himself how to draw, and along the way I've been giving him some tips. In one of his drawings, and here it is, there, he said he felt like he didn't really nail the perspective. I actually think he did pretty good here. You can see that this is 1 point perspective, and there are some like very tiny little things that I'm going to talk about, but overall it's pretty good. But I'm going to talk just a little bit about perspective in order to help him get to the kind of next stage of it. So this is going to be a perspective lesson. Let's say I have a observer, which I will represent with this eyeball here. Eyeball, lid, and of course we have the pupil here. And we have everything at eye level. If anything is above eye level, you can see the bottom of it. If anything's below eye level, you can see the top of it. That sounds super basic, but you would be surprised how often students mess this up. So if a coffee cup is at your eye level, you can't see the bottom or the top of it. It actually just looks like you get a little bit of rounding at the top, a little bit of rounding at the bottom, can't see either. If it's above, now you can see the bottom of it. If it's below, now you can see the top of it. That part's easy. If I take something like, let's make a very simple object, a square. And the square could be anything. It could be, say, a tree, right? Behold my artistry. All right. If you take an object like a tree, you could have one at this distance and then an identical tree further away. I'm just going to match it on the eye level there. So these trees are identical in size, but one's closer, the other's further away. Now, everything that you see has to fit onto a kind of mental picture plane here, right? The screen that you're watching the movie of your life on is only a certain dimension, right? So if we take a measurement from the top of the tree to the bottom of the tree, and we go, see how much of the picture plane that takes up there? The exact same object further away because it's further away is a much tinier angle and therefore takes up a much smaller portion of that picture plane. So things that are further away are smaller. They appear smaller to us. It just comes down to some basic geometry. The effect of this is that if I have an object that is extending away from me in some direction, the effect is that the far side is smaller than the close side. Okay? Let me do that better. Okay, there we go. There's my box. These are the outside sides. And you can see the inside sides there, like that. So because of this property that things get smaller as they move away from you, that's what gives you the distorted perspective lines that all move toward a point. Now, this point is called the vanishing point. And typically, any object will disappear to 1, 2, or 3 vanishing points. You can have more, but that's complicated. So we're going to stick to 1, 2, or 3 vanishing points. This box. Okay, I'm facing this side toward the camera. There we are. And you can see that this end is actually further away, and you can actually see the perspective lines going back toward me here, right? So this is in 1 point perspective because this side of the box is just facing you, so these lines make a nice clean rectangle, but this side is set up by lines that are pointing back toward me. If I took the box and I turned it, now you can actually see that one side of the box is pointing off to the right, the other side of the box is pointing off to the left, and there's going to be 2 sets of vanishing points as a result. So that's going to give us 2-point perspective. Just to clarify, the difference between 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective, if the side of a box is facing you, you're in 1-point perspective. If the long edge of a box is facing you, you're in 2-point perspective. This is why everything is boxes. Once you learn to see everything as a box, you can work out everything else. So, let's say I have my horizon line. It's a terrible horizon line. There we are. Oh, you're also using a digital art program, so if you hold down Shift and then drag your brush, you'll get a straight line. If I put a vanishing point here and a vanishing point here, I can put a box up here. I'm just going to give it my straight line. This is the side that's facing me right here, is this corner. And everything on this side is facing that way. Everything on this side is facing this way. Then let's see, where does it terminate? About here. And I'll have this side terminate about here, which is going to take me like that, like that, and that's going to be my box in 2-point perspective, right? I won't draw the interior here. I can, right here. Here's the, I'm only missing that one. And here would be the other corner right there. So that's a box in 2-point perspective because you have 1 vanishing point, 2 vanishing points. In the same scene, you can draw a single point perspective box. Easy enough. Ignore me struggling with a program I've used for 20 years. Anyway, there we go. There's a box in 1-point perspective. There's its outside vertices right there. Ignore the extra little line there that I didn't mean to make. So, the difference between 1-point perspective and 2-point perspective, here, the side of a box is facing us. Here, this corner of the box is facing us. 3-point perspective, these lines that are vertical right now, this one, and this one, also are going to converge to a vanishing point. You would only ever do 3-point perspective. I mean, do what you want, but typically you do 3-point perspective if your horizon line is above or below the picture that you're actually drawing. So here I'm just going to make the horizon line at the very bottom of the picture. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to draw a whole bunch of blue lines coming from this vanishing point. I'm going to make a whole bunch of magenta lines coming from this vanishing point. And you get this really nice grid coming out. And then I'm going to make a whole bunch of orange lines. Oh, I'm going to put the third vanishing point here, coming from here. Okay. Now, important thing to keep in mind, everything in my drawing here is going to stay in between these three vanishing points. If I move outside of that, that object is no longer going to be inside of this perspective system that I've just created. Now, once you have this set up, it's actually super simple. Right? All I did was draw 3 points, 2 of them on the same horizon line, and then the third one just somewhere above. Usually in line with where the viewer is, which is halfway up the picture, in the middle of the picture. And now I'm going to come in here with black, and I can actually just even freehand. Oh, okay, so I got a vertical line here. And and so there is my box in 3-point perspective. Okay, like that. So 1-point perspective, a face of the box is facing you. 2-point perspective, a side, a straight corner of the box is facing you. 3-point perspective, a point of the box is facing you. Right. So those are the 3 main perspective systems. The question is really in how many directions is the box moving away from you? 1-point perspective, it's this whole face is facing you, so it's only moving away from you in one direction. 2-point perspective, it's moving away from you this way and this way. 3-point perspective, all 3 of these faces are moving away from you. Now, let's take a look at your drawing, which is here, and it's actually pretty good. You said you felt like you didn't really nail the perspective, but this is clearly a 1-point perspective drawing. All these buildings are in 1-point perspective. And you can see that. Well, actually, you can see it because you sent me the perspective thing that you set up. And you can see that you put in perspective line here, 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 and here. The only thing I would say from perspective lines point of view is that you should have gone a little bit further with it. You should put on one there for each of these windows. So you can see actually how some of your window angles ended up missing. But you were correct, on this side that's facing you, you would just get squares. So that's correct. Now, yeah, so I would say just what you actually want to do is when you have your perspective grid, I would actually start out by just creating way more perspective lines than you think you need. Again, I'm just clicking a point here, holding shift, and then I click a second point. That's what gives me a straight line in any direction I want. And then it becomes really easy to put your perspective grid out because you have all these guidelines to go from. What I actually think could be improved, though, is if you take a look here, the edge of this building, which is in the background, is ending exactly where the edge of this building comes in. So this is the artistic mistake that my art handle is actually named after. This is a tangent. So what you want to do is make it so that this building tucks behind that building. Okay. That will not only give the impression, because this building looks like it's the shape of a textbook. That'll give the impression of it being a sizable building, and it's still like this face right here is still smaller than this, right? So you're still getting perspective. You're still getting smaller as you go, but it gives you the idea of this overlap, which increases the illusion that one thing's in front of the other. It gives you more depth. Same thing over here. You know, you don't have a tangent here, but these objects are separated in space, and you really want to see that overlap to show people that that one of them is in front of the other one. That one of them is in front of the other one. Like that. Now, here's the part that this is not a basic error. This is actually something that they wouldn't teach in an introductory perspective course. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add another layer. I'm going to put it behind your drawing. I'm going to sample your gray color here, and Alt backspace to just fill that in. I'm going to use the eraser tool here. Opacity of about 25%, 26%, fine. That's fine. Okay. So as these buildings recede into the background, you're having them get darker, and you're actually adding more detail to them. As things get further away from you, your eyes only have so much resolution. You actually lose detail. Like, you can see individual leaves on a tree when it's close to you, but as they get further away, you just see kind of a greenish blur with a little bit of shadow. Things just kind of cluster. together. Also, as things get really far away, the amount of air between you and the object increases. And the color of the sky comes from just the layers and layers of air in between you and the object, and that affects the light. So things typically tend to kind of fade into the background color as they get further and further away from you. That's called atmospheric perspective. So you actually gave me the reference drawing for this, right? And you can see it here, right? You have lots of detail on these relatively dark buildings up front, and then these buildings back here are lighter. They're closer to the color of the sky. They're light like the color of the sky. This is also because they're not bathed in shadow like everything up here is. But also they are have no detail on them, right? They're kind of fading away. This is a trick. It's a twofold trick. One is it's called atmospheric perspective. As things get further away, they have less detail, they fade into the background, so you can increase the illusion of depth by doing that. Two, detail adds interest. So you only want to detail the things that you want the audience to actually be looking at. So put all your detail around your subject and nothing around the background elements. Just kind of imply the background elements. Right? So here, what I'm going to do, and this is the other thing, you have them bathed in light, which, by the way, this triangular composition, awesome. Right? This is excellent. Right. I'm going to fade this building because it's bathed in light. And when you have an area that's bathed in light, everything outside of that really can't be seen all that clearly. So I'm actually going to erase all this. So these deep blacks, it's like a veil of light, right? So you wouldn't be able to see blacks as dark inside of here as you would elsewhere. So it's gonna give this a little bit of a fade. Now you might be able to get away with this if you're doing straight traditional inking. You would still need to do something that kind of replicated what I'm doing here, but because you have this kind of gray tone here, you need to be able to speak the language of that gray tone. So let me take a couple sniffs in for how pretentious that statement was. I'm just going to fade this building a little bit more. I'm going to fade this building the most because it's the furthest away. All right, so let's see here. History. Before. After. Right? You can see how it kind of gives that illusion of depth in there. And it also centers your focus on the kid here in the front because he has the most contrast now, right? Because your eye is always going to go to the point of the highest contrast. So he has bright white and the dark black here in the most detail. So it's, I'm supposed to look at that kid, right? That's going to be the focal point.